Have you ever had one of those moments, where you just have to stop and think to yourself, was that just a coincidence or was there something more going on there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Those moments that just make you go, huh, what were the chances?
Right, like when you think about someone you haven't seen in forever and then bump into them the very next day. Or maybe you're struggling with a decision and boom, the perfect piece of advice appears out of thin air.
Like it was meant to be, almost. Those experiences always stick with you, don't they?
They really do. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, the idea that these events, these so-called coincidences, might be more than just random occurrences. What if they're actually meaningful patterns, messages even, woven into the fabric of reality?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because this idea isn't new at all. If you look back at ancient cultures and spiritual traditions, you'll find they often talk about a deep interconnectedness, a hidden order beneath the surface of things.
It's almost as if modern society is the one that's kind of lost touch with that way of seeing the world, always defaulting to chance and coincidence as the explanation.
It does seem that way, yeah.
So in this deep dive, we're going to explore that very idea, drawing on the intriguing source material you've all provided. We're going to unpack what these synchronicities, as they're called, are all about. And maybe we'll even uncover some of the why behind them, too.
It's a real mystery, isn't it? Why do these things happen, and what do they mean?
Absolutely. Now, I know it's natural to approach this topic with a bit of skepticism. After all, we've been conditioned from a young age to value logic, reason, cause and effect. Anything that doesn't quite fit into that neat little box tends to get brushed aside as just our imagination or, a fluke.
Right, you can't really measure or quantify these kinds of experiences, so they're easily dismissed.
Exactly. But our source material raises a really thought-provoking question. What if that very conditioning, that emphasis on purely rational explanations, has actually blinded us to other layers of reality that are operating all around us?
Hmm, like we've put on blinders to anything that doesn't fit into our narrow definition of reality. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does. Makes you think back to all those times, especially in childhood, where you had that strong intuitive feeling about something, a gut feeling, that turned out to be right. And how often were those moments just shrugged off as, oh, it's just your imagination?
Oh, I remember those. I used to have these vivid dreams as a kid, and sometimes they would actually come true.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it was strange. I'd dream about something specific, and then a few days later, it would happen almost exactly as I dreamed it. But when I told people, they would just say, oh, it's just a coincidence.
See, and our source material suggests that our education system, with its focus on rote learning and external validation, played a role in downplaying that inner knowing, that intuition. We were taught to look for answers outside ourselves, not within.
It was all about what could be measured and proven empirically. If it couldn't be observed in a lab or quantified with data, it wasn't considered real knowledge.
And that brings us to how mainstream science often views these synchronicities. The tendency is to see them through the lens of cognitive biases, like confirmation bias, where you tend to notice evidence that confirms your existing beliefs.
If you're looking for a certain number, for example, you're going to see it everywhere, even if it's just appearing randomly.
Right. But then you have these incredibly influential figures throughout history, thinkers like Carl Jung, Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, people who were renowned for their intellect, not for being, flighty or superstitious.
Yeah.
And they all acknowledged the existence of patterns and hidden connections that seem to suggest a deeper order to reality, something beyond pure randomness.
Yeah, they saw those connections, even if they couldn't always explain them. It's as if they had a different kind of intelligence, a way of perceiving reality that was more attuned to those subtle patterns.
And it creates this strange paradox, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Someone who openly talks about experiencing synchronicities might be labeled as a little out there, while a strictly materialistic worldview is often praised as the rational and intelligent perspective.
It's definitely an interesting contrast.
And our source argues that this isn't just random social conditioning. There's a reason for this resistance. The idea is that when you start to truly notice these synchronicities, those moments that feel too perfectly aligned to be mere chance, it can lead to a very powerful realization. The realization that you are, in fact, connected to something far greater than yourself.
To something bigger, to the universe itself, perhaps.
Exactly. And that can be a pretty profound and even unsettling experience for some people.
Definitely, because it challenges our sense of separateness, that idea that we're just isolated individuals navigating a random and indifferent universe.
So let's break down what these synchronicities actually are. Our source describes them as experiences that feel incredibly precise and perfectly timed, almost to the point where they seem impossible to be mere chance. It's that moment when you'd think, whoa, there's no way that was just a coincidence.
Yeah, it's that gut feeling that something more is at play.
Exactly. Like when you're thinking about an old friend you haven't spoken to in years, and suddenly they call you out of the blue. Or you're grappling with a problem, and a random conversation with a stranger provides the exact insight you needed.
The kind of thing that makes you stop and say, wait a minute, how did that happen?
Right. And the source material suggests that these may not just be happy accidents, they might actually be meaningful signals, messages from a deeper intelligence, perhaps even a guiding force that's been there all along.
Messages trying to guide us or point us in the right direction. I like that idea. It's certainly more appealing than thinking everything is just random chaos.
Absolutely.
Mm.
The universe might not be just a chaotic jumble of random events, but rather a beautifully interconnected web of energy and consciousness.
A web where everything is related and interconnected in ways we don't fully understand.
Right. And if you consider the idea that every thought, intention, emotion carries its own unique energetic signature, almost like a radio wave, well, synchronicities could be seen as the universe's way of responding to those signals. It's like a subtle dialogue between our inner world and the outer world.
So our thoughts and intentions are like these energetic ripples that we're constantly sending out, and the universe is responding in kind.
That's the idea. Now, this brings to mind Carl Jung, the famous psychologist who actually coined the term synchronicity. He didn't see these meaningful coincidences as just random events. He viewed them as expressions of a hidden order within reality.
Right, Jung believed there was more to these synchronicities than met the eye. They weren't just meaningless flukes, they were glimpses into the interconnected nature of reality. And our source points out that this concept isn't unique to Western thought either.
Not at all. Eastern philosophies talk about karma, the idea that actions and their consequences are all interconnected. And mystical traditions often refer to divine timing, the idea that events happen at precisely the right moment for a reason.
Right, and even in modern physics, there's this concept of non-locality, where particles can be instantaneously connected regardless of distance. That seems to resonate with that feeling of interconnectedness we experience during a synchronicity.
It's amazing how all these different areas of thought, ancient wisdom, and modern science all seem to converge on this idea of an interconnected web of reality. Yet mainstream science often shies away from embracing it fully.
That's true. It's almost as if there's a resistance to fully acknowledging the role of consciousness in shaping reality.
But the universe itself seems to be built upon patterns.
Yeah.
Look at the intricate fractal designs in nature, the predictable orbits of planets, even the structure of our own DNA. Everything follows these underlying patterns, these blueprints. So why would human experience be any different?
That's a great point. If the universe itself operates on patterns and relationships, it makes sense that our thoughts, emotions, and experiences would also be part of that larger web.
Right? And that's where synchronicities come in. Maybe they're those moments where that underlying order, those hidden patterns become visible just for a fleeting moment.
Like those glitches in the matrix that make us question the nature of reality. And the source argues that the more we notice them, the more we begin to realize that things may not be as fixed and rigid as we've been led to believe.
Exactly. So if these synchronicities are messages, where are they coming from? Our source explores several possibilities. Some believe they originate from a higher aspect of ourselves, like our intuition or inner wisdom, trying to guide us.
Sort of like a higher self that has a broader perspective and can see things we can't.
Exactly. Others suggest synchronicities might tap into what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, that shared reservoir of human experience and archetypes that we all tap into.
So in a way, we're all interconnected through this vast network of unconscious knowledge and patterns.
Right. And some believe that these synchronicities are messages from an external source, like a divine intelligence or the universe itself, communicating with us in these subtle ways.
It's interesting to consider all these different perspectives. Regardless of where they come from, the key takeaway is that these synchronicities are likely not just random quirks of fate.
Exactly. They seem to be invitations to wake up, to become more conscious, and to shift from just reacting to life to actively participating in creating it. And once you start to see those patterns, that illusion of randomness starts to dissolve.
It really changes the way you view the world, doesn't it? It's like you're no longer just a passive observer, but you're actually part of this intricate dance of energy and consciousness.
Okay, so if synchronicities aren't random, how do they work? What could be the mechanism behind these seemingly impossible alignments? Our source suggests that understanding how synchronicities work requires understanding some of the more subtle ways reality operates. And a big part of that is recognizing that our minds aren't just passive observers, they're active participants in shaping our experience of reality.
Neuroscience is starting to uncover some fascinating insights into this. Consider the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Oh, the RAS, right.
Uh-huh.
As I understand it, it's like a filter in our brains that decides what information we consciously pay attention to. It filters out all the irrelevant stuff and highlights what's important to us at any given moment.
Exactly. And it explains why, for example, if you decide to buy a new car, let's say a red Toyota Camry, suddenly you start seeing red Toyota Camrys everywhere. They were always there, but your RAS wasn't tuned into them until they became relevant to you.
So the cars were there all along. It was just that our awareness shifted and our brains started to filter reality differently.
Precisely. And it suggests that our perception of reality is incredibly flexible and influenced by all sorts of factors, including our beliefs, expectations, and desires.
So how does that relate to synchronicities?
Well, the idea is that once you start looking for synchronicities, once you start believing in them, your RAS may actually become more attuned to noticing them. It's as if you're priming your brain to pick up on those meaningful connections that were always there but hidden in plain sight.
Like you're setting an intention to see them, and your RAS is responding by filtering reality in a way that highlights those patterns.
Exactly. But there might be something even deeper going on here, something that modern science is only beginning to grasp: the role of consciousness in shaping reality itself. Quantum physics, for example, has been hinting at this idea for decades.
Right, there's that famous double-slit experiment that suggests the act of observation can actually influence the behavior of subatomic particles. It's as if our consciousness is somehow entangled with the fabric of reality at a very fundamental level.
And our source material connects this to the idea of the law of vibration, the principle that everything in the universe is made up of energy vibrating at different frequencies. Our thoughts and emotions also have their own unique vibrational signatures, just like everything else.
So if everything is vibrating, then our thoughts and emotions are constantly emitting these energetic signals, and those signals can interact with the world around us.
Exactly. And the idea is that the frequencies we emit can attract experiences that vibrate at a similar level. This is the principle behind the law of attraction. If we consistently focus on negative thoughts and feelings, we might attract more negative experiences into our lives. But if we consciously shift our focus to more positive states, to things like gratitude, joy, and love, our energy signature changes, and we might start to attract more positive experiences.
And that could explain why people who become aware of synchronicities and start looking for them often seem to experience them more and more frequently.
It's not just that they're noticing them more. It might also be that their underlying energy is shifting, and the universe is responding in kind.
It's like tuning yourself to the right frequency, and then all of a sudden, those synchronicities become more apparent. It's like you're picking up a clearer signal.
Exactly. And our subconscious mind likely plays a significant role in this, too. While our conscious mind is busy with daily tasks, our subconscious is always working in the background, processing information, looking for connections, and picking up on subtle cues that our conscious mind might miss.
Right. It's like a powerful pattern recognition machine operating behind the scenes. So when we hold an intention, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, our subconscious could be orchestrating events to align with that intention.
And it could be especially attuned to synchronicities if we're actively looking for them. Now, I know skeptics might argue that this is just selective attention, that we're only remembering the times when things lined up perfectly and forgetting all the times they didn't.
Right. But our source counters that argument by asking, why do these synchronicities often carry such a deep personal meaning for us? They often align perfectly with our inner thoughts and emotions at just the right moment. And sometimes, they even seem to guide us towards major turning points in our lives. It's hard to explain that away as just random chance.
Exactly. There's often a sense of profound significance and purpose attached to these events that's hard to ignore. And it suggests that they might be a form of communication between our conscious mind, our subconscious wisdom, and that larger intelligence that seems to be orchestrating events behind the scenes.
So it's a three-way conversation between our conscious mind, our subconscious mind, and the universe itself.
That's one way to put it, yes.
Now, why do some people seem to live in a world that's full of synchronicities, while others rarely notice them at all? What sets those who feel guided by these moments apart from those who feel like they're just navigating a random series of events?
Our source attributes it to awareness, alignment, and belief. Many people, unfortunately, operate in a state of disconnection. They're caught in a loop of logical, skeptical thinking, having been conditioned to view the world as a purely mechanical process devoid of deeper meaning.
It's like they're looking through a very narrow lens that filters out anything that doesn't fit their preconceived notions of how reality should work.
Exactly. That strong belief in a purely materialistic worldview can act as a barrier to recognizing synchronicities. Even if something remarkable happens, they're more likely to dismiss it as mere chance and move on with their day.
They're just not tuned into that frequency.
Right. The source provides a helpful analogy.
Oh.
Imagine being in a room filled with radio waves. All those radio stations are broadcasting, but if your radio isn't tuned to the right frequency, you won't hear any of it. It's the same with synchronicities. If your mind isn't attuned to that frequency of connection and meaning, those signals will likely just pass you by unnoticed.
It's like having a powerful antenna but not knowing how to use it. On the other hand, those who experience synchronicities regularly, they're not necessarily special or gifted in any way. They've simply cultivated a more receptive way of thinking. They've learned to pay attention to their inner world, to trust their intuition, and to look for those meaningful connections in the unfolding of events.
And it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The more you acknowledge and appreciate synchronicities when they happen, the more likely you are to notice them in the future. And that's where the power of the subconscious mind comes in.
Our subconscious is constantly scanning our environment, picking up on patterns and connections. When we consciously focus on synchronicities, we're essentially telling our subconscious to prioritize finding them. It's like setting a mental search parameter. Hey, subconscious, find me more of these meaningful coincidences. And the principle of vibrational alignment comes into play too.
Exactly. When we're in a state of low energy, feeling stressed, doubtful, or negative, our field of awareness tends to narrow and it becomes more difficult to perceive those subtle connections.
But when we raise our vibration through practices like gratitude, mindfulness, or spending time in nature, our energetic field expands and synchronicities become more apparent. It's as if we're tuning into a clearer channel.
Precisely. And there's a crucial element of trust involved. People who frequently experience synchronicities tend to trust their gut feelings. They trust the process. They're more willing to embrace the unknown and see those synchronicities as potential guides.
They're willing to surrender to the mystery and see where it leads them.
And that willingness to trust and act on those intuitive nudges further reinforces the cycle of synchronicities. The source emphasizes that a lot of people might notice a synchronicity, but then hesitate, doubt it, or ignore it altogether. And that can weaken the connection. These synchronicities are often presented as opportunities, as open doors. We have
Right.
to be willing to walk through them.
It's about taking that leap of faith, trusting that the universe has your back, even if you don't fully understand why things are unfolding the way they are.
Right. Trusting that there's a greater intelligence at play, guiding you towards your highest good, even if the path isn't always clear.
So how can we cultivate this ability to recognize, interpret, and act upon these synchronicities so they become a more active guiding force in our lives? How do we start decoding this language of signs?
The first step is a shift in perspective. We have to move away from the idea that life is just a series of random, disconnected events and embrace the possibility that everything is interconnected in ways we might not always see or understand. The universe often speaks to us through symbolism, through patterns, through impeccable timing. It's about learning to recognize that language.
And our source highlights three main forms these signs often take. The first is through numbers and repeating patterns, like seeing the number 11.1 or 333 everywhere you look. These are often seen as vibrational frequencies, signals that something is shifting or aligning in your life.
Across cultures, numbers have always held deep symbolic meaning, often seen as the fundamental building blocks of creation. So encountering these repeating sequences, it can be a sign that you're aligning with a particular energy or frequency.
Right, it's like the universe is tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, pay attention, something's up.
And the key is to pay attention to what's going on in your life when you see these numbers. What are you thinking about? What are you feeling? What decisions are you facing?
The second way these signs show up is through symbolic encounters. Things like meaningful objects, seeing a particular animal repeatedly, or a certain song playing at just the right moment.
It's that feeling of resonance, of something feeling deeply significant to you personally. If a particular image or phrase keeps popping up, or you keep hearing the same song over and over again, trust that there might be a message there for you.
It's like a recurring theme in the soundtrack of your life.
Exactly. And the third form is through what our source calls unlikely events or meaningful coincidences, those times when everything lines up in such a perfect, improbable way that it almost defies logical explanation.
It's that no way moment.
Exactly. The unexpected opportunity that arises just when you are about to give up, the chance encounter with a person who has the exact information you were looking for.
So, when one of these synchronicities does happen, how do we interpret its meaning? Our source recommends asking yourself a few reflective questions. What were you thinking about right before it happened? What important decisions are you facing? Does this event relate to anything you've been questioning or struggling with?
Journaling can be a really helpful tool here, too. Writing down these events and your reflections can help you uncover hidden patterns, symbolic themes, and maybe even a clearer sense of the guidance you're receiving.
Right, it's like creating a map of the synchronicities in your life so you can start to see the bigger picture. And our source reminds us that simply recognizing synchronicities is only the first step. The real transformation comes from taking action based on what they seem to be telling us. If you keep seeing signs pointing you in a certain direction, at some point, you need to be willing to take a step in that direction.
Exactly. Those who seem to live in the most synchronistic way are often those who trust those nudges and are willing to act on them. It's about shifting from being a passive observer to becoming a co-creator, working in tandem with those subtle forces of the universe.
Becoming an active participant in the unfolding of your own life story.
Right. So we've talked about what synchronicities are, how they might work, how to recognize them. Now, how do we invite more of these meaningful coincidences into our lives? How do we open ourselves up to experiencing more of that synchronicity?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Can we actually influence the frequency of these synchronicities in our lives? Our source says we can. And they suggest three key elements: intention, alignment, and action.
Intention is crucial. Synchronicities often respond to a focused mind. The more clarity we have about our goals, desires, and intentions, the more likely we are to experience those synchronistic nudges from the universe.
So we should be specific about what we want, right?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to actually ask the universe for signs. Literally, ask for guidance.
So we should say something like, "Universe, show me a sign if I should take this job or not."
Exactly. The universe often responds to our requests, even if they're unspoken. But by consciously articulating your desires and asking for guidance, you're essentially sending a clear signal out to the universe. And then the key is to stay open and receptive to how that guidance might manifest.
Because it doesn't always come in the form we expect, right?
Right. It might not be a booming voice from the heavens. The universe often speaks in whispers, through feelings, through symbols, through unexpected encounters.
The second key is alignment. As we've discussed, synchronicities are often a reflection of our overall vibration, our energetic state. If we're feeling resistant, doubtful, or negative, we might inadvertently block that flow of synchronistic energy.
But when we cultivate a state of trust, excitement, and receptivity, synchronicities seem to become more frequent. They're often more common during periods of significant change when we're stepping into a new phase of life.
It's like when you're stepping out of your comfort zone. The universe starts sending you more guidance to help you navigate that unfamiliar territory.
It's as if it's saying, okay, I see you're stepping up, so here are some signs to help you along the way. Practices like meditation, gratitude, visualization, spending time in nature, all of these can help raise our energetic frequency and create that inner space of openness where synchronicities can flow more freely.
Right. It's like tuning into the right energetic wavelength to receive those signals. And then, of course, there's the third key element: aligned action. This is where a lot of people get tripped up. They might see a sign, feel an intuitive nudge, but then they hesitate, overthink it, and end up doing nothing. But synchronicities aren't meant to be just observed. They're often catalysts for us to take action.
If you keep seeing the same message or theme repeating itself, it's probably not just random noise. It's a nudge from the universe. If you feel a pull toward a certain person, opportunity, or path, trust that. That could be the universe opening a door for you.
Right. It's not just about seeing the signs. It's about trusting them and then taking that leap of faith.
Exactly. The universe rewards those who take action. The more you listen to those inner nudges and act upon them, the more those synchronicities seem to multiply, and life can start to unfold in ways that feel more aligned and effortless. It's as if you're flowing with the current of the universe rather than swimming upstream against it.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not just passive recipients of fate, but active participants in shaping our own reality. Now, as we conclude this exploration of synchronicities, our source has a direct message for you, the listener.
It acknowledges that it's easy to fall back into old habits of thinking, to dismiss those uncanny moments as mere chance, or let fear paralyze us from acting on those intuitive nudges. But we've often been conditioned to ignore those deeper aspects of reality.
Right, we've been taught to prioritize logic and reason above all else.
Exactly. But now that you have this understanding, you have the opportunity to see the world through a different lens, to recognize that reality might not be as random and chaotic as it sometimes appears.
To see the hidden order, the interconnectedness.
Right. It's an invitation to cultivate a deeper sense of trust, to expand your understanding of how reality operates, to align yourself with your deeper purpose, and most importantly, to take action. And the source cautions against consistently ignoring those synchronicities, as they might become less frequent over time if you do.
It's like they're saying, hey, I'm here, I'm trying to guide you, but if you're not listening, I'll eventually stop shouting.
Exactly. But if you choose to pay attention, if you treat those synchronicities as meaningful and follow where they seem to be leading you, your life could potentially shift in profound and unexpected ways. You could find yourself living with a greater sense of ease, flow, and alignment, a sense that you're in the right place at the right time.
Living in that magical state of synchronicity.
Exactly. Because those who experience the most synchronicities, they're not just lucky. They're actively paying attention, trusting the process, and acting on those intuitive nudges. And the final thought the source leaves us with is this. Synchronicities aren't some rare, extraordinary events reserved for a select few. They're happening all around us constantly, waiting to be noticed when we simply wake up to their presence.
So the question is, are you ready to wake up? Are you ready to start seeing the magic that's woven into the very fabric of reality? Because it's there, waiting to be discovered.
It is. It's always been there.
Just have to open your eyes to see it.